Okay, I'm just going to share that once more. It's funny, I think. There you go. Okay. Okay, well, thank you. Thanks for coming. I'm here again. It's a Wednesday morning, so this is the live show for the Australians. um, yeah, I've got back-to-back self-inquiries. So I did a self-inquiry yesterday and self-inquiry today, which is fine. It's better if it's shared, but it's okay. It's good for me to have a practice of doing this, I guess, for myself. Usually, what happens is I have some problem and it comes through quite quickly, and I don't always give myself the chance to sit and be with it, which is what I'm purporting other people should do, which is just typical hypocrisy. So it's good that this is here. Um, yeah, if you feel like joining, I've put the links in as many places as I can, and you're welcome. I'll give it a few minutes before I start the self inquiry. Um, as usual, if you're at home, it's always good to watch this, like watching yourself at the same time. So, noticing your body, get comfortable and notice your body and notice what things are triggered through the feeling in your body, and notice what's coming up into the mind as I move through. And you'd be surprised actually when this is shared, it really interacts quite nicely with each other. You sort of move each other along, and the ego's out of it because you're like watching yourself and the other person. So, um, and so my thought for today, actually, I was going to put the quack hat on and do like a fun sort of session. The vulnerability session I did yesterday, I had this feeling of being a failure at the end of the day, and going through that session, it just reminded me at the end, this gratitude came, and it reminded me to do like to remember that I'm doing this also for myself, for my own joy, and and so today I had the thought of putting the quack hat on and doing a session on time and the experience of time. So I think, like, initially we start self-inquiry to try and understand our suffering and really to try and get rid of it, try and get rid of our suffering. And then over time, what happens is this change comes where there's a curiosity about what's here rather than this immediate trying to push something away. And you can kind of you can get there a bit faster um, if you use self-inquiry for assumptions and investigations that aren't heavily, emotional. Um, that's just my idea, I guess. So time is a good one. Time runs through all suffering. The Buddhists have got it right when they say that all thought is based on time, and that all of our future thought are based on our yesterday's thought, and you can do something with the stories that are playing through in the mind if you can see through time in some degree. It brings an element of doubt into the story, which stops it from being absolute, which if you notice that all suffering stories are absolute. Absolutely, this person friggin' did something to me. It's always an absolute story. And it's only when you can get that crack that, oh, maybe it wasn't what I thought it was, or maybe it didn't happen in the way I thought it was, or in the case of time, maybe if time doesn't exist, then what is this that I'm reacting to? Um, something happens at the start of the day, and then you continue it on, and you continue that story for years in some ways. So seeing through time in this present moment as a present direct self inquiry can affect all stories, and can open up all stories. And kind of not knowing is a kinder place most of the time than definitely knowing, because definitely knowing is often, well, it's always suffering. It's always suffering. It's not always like, if you're suffering, then you believe something 100%, but not necessarily if you believe something 100% that you're suffering. It's not backwards and forwards in that way. But anyway, so I was going to do this quack. I put the quack hat on. I might just do it anyway, just for a bit of fun. It's a bit cold here. I don't know if you can see it's snowing outside at the moment. But the quack hat comes on when we look at something that's a little bit more quacky. And time is definitely one of them. But what happened was I was having a conversation with a cousin this morning, and it stirred quite a lot of stuff. So I'm a bit reluctant to share this too, I noticed. Usually I'm pretty okay with doing inquiry and sharing, and this is something it's, I don't know, it's a little bit scary to share. And I noticed that after I started speaking to him, that this story started to generate in my mind, a little bit of a fantasy type of story of saying things to him and responding, and I know once that happens, once those stories start generating, that there's a problem and that I'm suffering. And then interestingly too, when I sat down here to just get everything ready and I was thinking about it, I still had this feeling of sort of insight came in. This idea of vulnerability from yesterday came in, and I could see that that there's an element of this that I feel vulnerable about, and that yesterday's inquiry is continuing into this today's inquiry. So we're getting pretty close to 10 minutes. And no one's jumped on yet, so I'm just going to crack on. And if you want to come and join me afterwards, it's usually half an hour, 40 minutes a session. Maybe it's quicker, maybe it's longer. I don't know. But if you want to join, just send me a message in the chat and let me know, and that way I'll keep it open a bit longer at the end. Otherwise, I'll just leave it open for 5 minutes at the end, 5 or 10 minutes, just to see if anyone wants to come. Okay, but so the story is, or the thing I want to take a look at today is, I've got this relative, a cousin, and I've been noticing I've been distancing myself a little bit from him, and I've been unable to speak to him about it. And I think that's a usual way of mine, is not having so much courage to be able to be honest with people, and just being afraid of what their response might be. And I mean, there's specific things in this situation probably that we'll go into at some point, but okay, it's like being afraid of the emotion is what comes, being afraid of the emotion that will come with it, that I think will come with it. And it's actually, it's a better way to freedom than self-inquiry, actually, because it's immediate and it's not always available. But anyway, I've been distancing myself a little bit from him, and the reason for it is because I feel a bit like the relationship is one way. He was going through quite a lot, quite heavy stuff this last year. And I felt like I was trying as much as I could to be there and listen to him and, be a bit of supportive for him. He's by himself, and maybe he doesn't have the best relationship with his family, and I just noticed though that this last time he's got this tendency just to speak about himself the whole time. And at the start, it was okay because I recognized he needed to get things out, but there wasn't this toing and froing that was happening, and he didn't seem sort of interested in me and what was happening for me at all. It just seemed always about him, and I'm not sure that he's aware of that. And probably if I brought it to him in this moment, he might actually, it's interesting, he might actually, be able to change and be able to be a bit more backwards and forwards. But he's so sort of dominating and over the top and loud voice, and he's smart and he knows it, and he's very willing to tell you it. He's very willing to stop anything that you've got to say and, come over the top of it. And, he's this like type of person that's always right. And, he doesn't listen to hear, he listens to retort or to respond. And I don't know, it's a bit much sometimes. It's a bit much. And I can see in my mind that he can't really help it, but it makes me just want to just come back a bit and go, okay. And the suffering here, I don't feel bad about sort of stepping back a little bit. But the suffering that's here at the moment is about not being able to speak my mind or speak to him in this way. And so as I'm sort of telling this story, I'm having these little insights along the way, because it's natural. Once you start doing self-inquiry, then the mind is more open, and the insights come a lot. So I'm kind of having insights as we go with the story, but and it simplifies in my mind. The story simplifies into, I've been hurt. I feel hurt by this. I feel hurt that he wouldn't, or that he hasn't, sort of like worried about me or cared about me. It's a common theme. This the suffering for me is not being cared about. There's a common theme in this. So, and also there's this common theme about not being able to bring this forward and speak about it. And I'm lucky in a sense, because I've got a friend that I do self-inquiry with who's very similar to this person. He's very, very much the same. And being able to do this inquiry with him, I don't feel afraid of bringing things up. I don't feel afraid of saying, hey, you're railroading me, or you're not listening to what I'm saying, and this is, like calling him out on his things. And that's been helpful, because they're very similar. And often when I do the session with him, the image of the cousin would come in. And I'd love to be able to have this kind of conversation with him, where we could just stop and sit and be together, and not have it be so intellectual, have it be a bit more, open. And I know as well, like, I know he can't, I mean, am I right in saying that? I've got this image in my mind of us having this conversation, and I know that he would just start blaming me. He would just turn everything back onto me. And he's smart enough too that he can, you know, and part of it I'm sure is true, but it doesn't, like, that doesn't, it doesn't bring the conflict or the relationship to a um, hmm. I was just reading something online about Trump being um, a negotiator, but a specific type of negotiation where it's win and lose, and that's the only thing he knows. So it's always win and lose. But then there's other type of negotiation where it's win-win type of thing, and that's really what self-inquiry is. When two people come together and the intent is not to win but to understand and feel, like fully feel, then it's always win-win at the end. Um, but I don't think I could have that type of conversation with him. I don't know. Is that helping my suffering? Is that keeping it in place? Okay, so it's simplified before. It's simplified to I feel hurt because of him, and I'm afraid to tell him that. And as I say that, as it simplifies in my mind, I can feel that hurt in my body. And as I sort of connect in with it and I feel it like fully, it comes with a sense of sadness and a little bit of grief. Okay, and then what happens is it moves in my mind. So I see the image of actually speaking to him and speaking from this place of hurt. And as I'm speaking the words, "You've hurt me," to him, there's a sense of embarrassment that comes with it. And I'm afraid of that. Mm. Yeah, I'm afraid of making a spectacle. So I'm afraid of just speaking fully from the emotion and being a bit out of control. And it's almost like I see this room of people that are all like having a party or something. And, we all know this as well. Like we've all been in situations where someone's kind of lost it. The words are like lost it or um, had an emotional outburst. And there's a sense of awkwardness and embarrassment. Mm. And I'm reminded of a time when I was younger, when I maybe it was the last time I had this kind of outburst. I don't know, but I'm reminded of a time of having this kind of uncontrollable outburst, and it felt quite it felt quite cathartic at the time, actually. So, and then what happens is it comes back into having this conversation, and it's quite a simple conversation. There's this, hey, at the moment, you're not you're not giving me what I need in this kind of relationship. I need you to be interested in what I've got and what I'm doing and who I am. Mm, feels really awkward to say it like that. So, okay, so the idea of like And to start with, I'm feeling very, very vulnerable in this moment, having this kind of conversation and sharing it in this way. It feels the sensation itself, the wound itself, feels very vulnerable, and I want to explore that a little bit. But something else came in just then about ego and the connection of ego to the idea of need. Like in this moment, I need this from this person, seemingly, and there's a sense of ego that's tied to that. So I'm just going to see, and this sense of like vulnerability here it's palpable. I didn't feel this yesterday. It's interesting. My dad's coming in here a bit now too. I'd like to have this conversation with my dad, but I've got the feeling he would respond in the same way. Like just get angry and start blaming. Mm. Okay, and so the hurt, like that sort of moves through in my mind. I see, yep, okay, that if I come at my dad or my cousin with like from this place of hurt, or blame, that it's just going to be thrown back at me in some way, and it's not going to resolve anything. And there's a feeling of wanting to come from a more stable kind of place. Um, but in order for that to happen, then this wound needs to be sort of tended to. The sense of being hurt in some way, because that's all of this is like, it's like how I see them acting is a trigger for this wound. It makes me feel this sense of being hurt and like not being cared for. Um, that's the underlying theme. So that's really what I need to take a look at. And then that kind of goes to an extreme in my mind. I see them exaggerate their dislike for me, and like actively not care for me, hurt me in some way physically, and there's a sense of helplessness that comes with that. Mm. Yeah, I can see that they're like bigger and stronger and angrier than me, and more okay with hurting people physically and like emotionally. And I see myself as being like a lot less than that, smaller and weaker in some ways. It's hard to admit that. Mm. Okay. Okay, so then it turns. As I sit with that, it turns the other way, and I'm afraid of that part of myself. I'm afraid of my own anger and my own um, capacity to hurt other people. Um, I don't like that side of myself. I want to distance myself from that side. So there's a split here. There's a sense of separation from some part and some characteristics of me, and it's reflected. I can. It's like a bit hard to explain, but you know, like we distance ourselves from the things that we don't like and we don't want, and at the center of all of that is the sense of ourselves that we don't want and that we don't like, and we push it out onto other people, and whether they have those characteristics or not, um, both of these people definitely have those characteristics, um, but but I can see I am putting some blame onto them, and it's a subdiffusion. I'm doing that so I don't have to feel the anger and the what is it? It's like it's like something being pointed out, not knowing something being pointed out, being a bit oblivious. It's all stemming back into this. Um, hmm. I'll just come back to the sensation. It's not so obvious where it's like what the return is, what the identity is in the middle. So I feel this kind of turmoil in the belly. Okay, and then what comes with that is an anger. An anger comes with that, and I see that in my mind, and I feel that in that turmoil. And I'm just sitting here with that anger and letting it be here, letting it sort of perpetuate in my mind, noticing the sensation of anger and what it feels like in the body. It's kind of doing this in the belly. Mm. There's a reluctance here. It's what's coming up now is having this conversation with my cousin, and there's a reluctance to, because pointing this out is going to affect the relationship somewhat. It's going to be every time we converse, it'll be sort of um, it's hard to explain, but it'll be kind of re-experienced, that sense of pain that I've given to him by saying, "Hey, you're basically being really selfish and not interested in me and what I've got to say." And I can hear my cousin sort of saying to me, "So how are you?" On the phone, and I can hear that, his response to that now every time we have this conversation, and he's asking me, there's no like fluidity in the conversation. There's a sense of not wanting that either. Hmm. Hmm. Okay, it's interesting. So it expands, that idea expands out into different realms or different like people. that I feel this way as well. Like my sisters. I feel my sisters don't call me enough or at all. Um, Different parts of the family. Yeah, there's a reluctance to have this conversation as well, because it means that I'll be thinking of that when they call, that, oh, they're calling just because I had to say something, rather than them wanting. It's kind of like, I'm damned if I do and damned if I don't. I mean, who wants a relationship that's, and there's something here too, there's something underneath, like just right here. Who wants a relationship that is based on, um, you know, mm, you want someone to call you because they want to call you. You want someone to love you because that's what they do. You don't want them to have to love you. Um, mm. Yeah, it's interesting. So now this wound falls into a need, and I see that, there's a need here. It's a need. It's like a sensation in my body that's sort of yearning for something, and there's a thought definitely that comes over the top, that says I want or I need. Okay, and then all of the things that come after I need are falling away. So as I watch it, and they toggle through my mind, I need. Okay, that was interesting. It just dropped out. Um, yeah. Okay. So, but like the needs here, and then there's this. I need this, and that they're toggling through my mind. So, I need to be loved. I need to be cared for. I need to be seen. I need to be heard. All of those are toggling through, but they're not affecting my body, right? So a strong belief, you're going to feel it in the body, and I can see my mind is toggling through a few things, and none of them are really hitting home. And then what happens is that those those following words fall away, and it just comes to I need, and that affects my body. Hmm. And maybe this doesn't make so much sense to my mind, um, but it's interesting just to sit here in this need. Ah, okay, because all of those things that come after I need are just avenues of escape. Uh, okay, okay, interesting. So at the end, I think my experience seems to be in this like life that at the end of this need is the relaxation of this feeling of need, and and that's what kind of the wound is, or that's what the feeling is. It's all designed to get rid of this feeling of need. And and for whatever reason in this moment, I can see that there's no satisfaction, there's no end to the need by going into these different avenues, by needing to be cared for, and to feel loved, and not feel the sensation, basically, and then by needing to be seen in a particular way and feel good about myself, and that is not satisfying in this moment, and needing to be heard, and these different endings of the need have fallen away, and there's just the need. So I'm sitting here just with that feeling of need, and it's just the word need. Oh, mm. Yeah, okay. So definitely a few insights have come through about need itself. I can see that it's this kind of wave of movement, which is the same wave of movement that happens with suffering, and it's this inward and outward movement. It's escape, or it's control, or do something, and I can see that there, and I can feel that, and mm, oh, there was another quite strong insight that came, but I lost it. Ah, okay. It was about the interconnectedness of things, that nothing happens independently, that everything is affecting everything at the same time. And it's kind of this beautiful dance. And it's sort of showing me that the things that are happening, are not, they're not independent from me. They're not happening. hmm, I don't know how to explain it, but quite a strong insight. Because what happened in my mind was I went back to this conversation with my cousin, and this time I was just sitting and listening. I was just listening to him talk about himself, and I didn't feel triggered by it. And before that was the case, but I sort of go through these moments of need. It was the same with my dad and my sisters and some of my family. Like, I hadn't needed to contact them or speak to them, unless it just came about, unless I called them, or they called me, or it was someone's birthday or whatever. Mm. Mm. Okay, and then another part drops in as well, because there's a part of me that actually doesn't want to tell my cousin what I'm doing, because he can't not, you know, have an opinion of it. Um, he can't not sort of imply that I'm doing it wrong, or that I could be doing it better this way, or he'll just turn it back onto himself anyway. So that part of the conversation, at times is me making it short, because I don't want to go through that. And, why talk to someone that doesn't want to listen? In a kind way. I'm not saying that it's funny because I said that at the start and it felt sort of nasty. It felt like from that place of hurt. But saying it now, it just feels sort of common sense. Okay, and then I see also it's interesting. So another kind of option comes up into my mind. Another kind of story comes up, and it's and it's it's that same conversation that ends in a different way. And this time, I see my cousin, and he like we're never another part of suffering. I started here with this story about suffering being an absolute story, and included in that is this idea that we are absolutely something. So in the story that was playing in my mind, my cousin was absolutely selfish in my mind as well, and I was absolutely not heard or not cared for or in need, let's say. And so as I moved through that, then this sort of not opportunity, but there's an opening that happens, and my cousin can come in to this story and be a different way, to respond to what I'm saying by, hey man, you're like just talking about yourself all the time, and you're not really listening to what I've got to say. And I can see him come in and go, oh man, I'm sorry, have his little bit of a joke because that's how he is. And it's quite touching. It's quite touching. Like I know it. I know that he, before I didn't know this. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but what I'm seeing in my mind and the experience I'm having now is of him, giving me that space to be a bit emotional and to get a bit angry and not to retort in the way that I think that he would. And so it's a different experience that's happening in my mind. And then it's the same with my dad, he kind of, it's just kind of the way he is. It's probably from the way he's been raised with his dad as well. And that allows, like seeing that allows me to, release it, to release the feeling of hurt and to be able to listen more also. Like it's definitely a two-way street. In my mind, I can listen more now to what they're saying back to me. I can take a little bit of blame as well. Okay, maybe I don't call you every week. I call my mum once a month, but I don't call you once a month. I'm saying this to my dad. And yeah, okay. And then it just moves back to my cousin, and he, there is a backwards and forwards, but it's just on a particular level that's not always satisfying. And it's not always what I'm interested in. So it's the same. It's like it's on the same side. And then like maybe to finish this off too, the thought of vulnerability comes in, and the question is was that vulnerability? Was that an experience of vulnerability? Okay. Interesting. So it shows me that the vulnerability only really is vulnerable if it can be both. If it can, if you can be destroyed by it or not. Um, if it's just one way in particular, like if you're confident that nothing is going to happen, you can put something out. If you're not afraid that something could happen to it, like the wound, if I'm not really being vulnerable if it's a wound that I'm not afraid of. Maybe then it's not a wound. I don't know, but it's showing me that in order to be vulnerable, then there needs to be that element of fear and capacity for or opportunity for destruction and having that wound hurt. I don't know. Like I'm waffling a little bit, but and I'm just like going into my mind now again and just revisiting this idea of speaking to him and saying, hey, you know, you've been talking about yourself a lot. You haven't really like asked me how I'm going or what I'm doing. Not really. Mm. Yeah, I can see. Okay, I'm reminded of a friend actually, Maria. Maybe you're watching actually, but she like her courage is just it's beautiful. Um, coming through this work and then realizing that I need to go and actually say something, and maybe it's the Finnish way of being as well helps in this regard. But but I'm buoyed by her courage and mm. Okay. Well, that was a bit of a roller coaster. How do I feel? Sensation's still here. It doesn't feel like doesn't have a it doesn't feel like an emotion. Okay, it just feels like a sensation, and I can feel it connected to different parts in my body at the moment. Down into my leg, I feel a bit of trembling in one of my legs, in the calf. Okay, and I can feel my mind is quite like um, calm. That the stories that were there have played through, and they're not coming back up, which is after the conversation, I was making the sauna, and you can hear that kind of like of the fantasy, tellings and stories that just kind of won't leave you alone. That movement is just sort of subsided. Yeah, and the sensation, it's quite sensitive. Hmm. Okay, well, no word on anyone else coming to join me. Um, but it's okay. I think I'll go now, and I just got the sense now, just feeling what's going on in the body after moving through all of that. the sensation and the different parts that it's connected to in the body. All right. Let's see what happens. I'll get back to you on what the repercussions are. And I'll see you tomorrow evening, 8 p.m. Helsinki time. And I've got Merius coming actually, so it'll be a shared session tomorrow. Thanks. Thank you.